Welcome to Binge Watchers, where we talk about the stories and characters we love and the shows they live in. My name is Ron, and let's talk about Season 2 of Mindhunter.
Hey, Ron from the future here. Something just went completely wrong with the audio, so sorry that the quality of audio is not what it usually is on these videos, but we should be okay for this one video. Okay, back to it.
So you might remember from the Season 1 review I made roughly a gazillion years ago that I loved Mindhunter. The first thing you kind of notice about Mindhunter and a lot of other works by David Fincher or stuff that he's involved in is that dialogue is weird. It's weird in the sense that it gives you the jarring feeling of no one talks like that. I got the same feeling when I watched Gone Girl, which I thought was a very good movie. The dialogue feels very rehearsed, it's almost too clean, and in a lot of other shows, it would very much turn me off. And it did take me an episode or two in this show as well to kind of get used to it back on Season 1 of Mindhunter. But then you see that here, it's actually one of the things that give the show its vibe, its atmosphere. Everything feels a little dreamlike, a little distant, like how you might have to be if you spent your days learning about terrible, terrible murders. I feel like I was able to enjoy Season 2 even more because I was ready for it. Hell, I was looking for it. So Season 2 continues to follow Holden, Bill, and Wendy as they study serial killers for the FBI and they pioneer the practice of profiling, trying to learn about these criminals so they can make assumptions that would help them capture new criminals. So the first half of this season is exactly what you've come to expect and know and love from Season 1. They interview murderers, they make their conclusions, they study, and then sometimes they get a chance to share or implement what they've learned. If you've enjoyed this part of Season 1, this aspect of Mindhunter, you'll definitely enjoy it here. These conversations are always a prime example of how just a few people talking in a room can have you at the edge of your seat. At first, and I talked about this a little bit in the What Are We Watching video for that week, it felt like more of the same, but the same in this case is so good. It does come to a point, however, where you feel, or at least I felt, that I wanted to see where the overall story was going. Like, we didn't need every single interview. Looking back, we actually did, because every one of those conversations reveals something, but at the time I was watching, it was getting a bit tedious. The second half of the season presents Bill and Holden with a chance to implement some of the methods that they came up with throughout the entire show. They get involved with the real-life case of the Atlanta child murders, which is a real-life case where about 28 people, most of them children, were murdered between the years of 1979 and 1981. Now, I can't really talk about this part without spoilers, so just to wrap up the spoiler-free part of this video, Season 2 of Mindhunter is great. I have no doubt that if you enjoyed Season 1, you will enjoy this season as well. It does get a bit meandering at some point. There are a few things that the season sets up that you don't really get payoff for, but it makes up for it by digging very deep into Bill's character, who is by far my favorite character in the show. And it does give us a bit more Wendy, but I actually wish that we could have explored that character even further. The show also does a really good job at exploring the consequences of the type of person Holden is. How he means well, but at the same time he can be unknowingly condescending and just oblivious to the way that real life works and how frustrating it can be for other people around him. I found that fascinating. If you know people like that, I know I definitely do, sometimes you just want to smack them. You want to smack them and just tell them that things don't work that way. So, bottom line, should you watch it? Yes, I think you should. Now let's get into some spoilers. This is your spoiler warning. So, in the second half of the season, they are in Atlanta investigating the child murders, and on top of that, we learn that Bill's son was involved in the murder of an infant. I think that the fact that this wasn't some crazy murderer, but it was just a bunch of kids, made the whole thing so much more powerful. Bill is such a layered character. On the surface, he's just your kind of typical American dad character, but he proves to be a thoughtful, composed person who both understands how the world works and is able to deal with pretty much everything it throws at him. So exploring his character through something unimaginably horrible happening to him gave us a real chance to see him unravel. The whole Atlanta part of the season, which is a major part of the season, was interesting. I did feel that it kind of fell into a loop at some point, but the part I actually want to talk about was the ending. Mindhunter is very different than most cops versus criminals types of shows. While it does have the eerie, dreamlike vibe to it, it does try to show us something that's real. For example, that in many cases, the bad guys get away. It's very clear, for example, that Ed Kemper wouldn't have been caught if he didn't want to be. And in some cases, those cases will only get looked at if they don't get in the way or somehow contribute to something like a political move. At the end of the show, they catch the killer. They are pretty sure he's the one that killed the children in Atlanta, but they can only tie him to 2 murders, which is what really happened. At which point, law enforcement takes a victory lap and calls it a day, and the case never gets looked at again. And the victory feels hollow, especially to Holden, who doesn't really accept the world as it is. The show doesn't let us go like, yeah, they caught the bad guy. It shows us that maybe they got him and they did just the bare minimum they had to in order to make it look good. I thought it was an incredibly powerful and raw moment, perfect ending for the season, and then it gets completely undercut by the BTK stuff. I know that they're trying to build something for future seasons. The BTK Strangler was only captured in 2005, and only because he practically turned himself in when he spoke to the press. I don't know if they're going to do like a time jump or something, it doesn't matter. But the way that they handled all the BTK stuff throughout this season, I thought was just kind of pointless. It's obviously building up towards some Holden versus BTK storyline, but I felt that the short clips of him that we got didn't justify having him undercut the very powerful ending scene, the real ending of the show. I mean, it's not like it ruined it. BTK is barely even in the show, but I just feel that it didn't add anything. It's like they stretched the BTK storyline too thin and then it just broke, and then I stopped caring. So when he popped up after the real final scene, I was just like, oh, this guy. Okay, so wrapping it up, fantastic season, very much enjoyed it. I am looking forward for season 3. It's not an easy casual watch. I did struggle with it at times, but it's definitely worth it. I want to know what you thought. Let me know in the comments down below. And if you're talking about spoilers, please just use spoiler tags in your comments. And if you're finding Binge Watchers for the first time, welcome. I'd like to invite you to join the Binge Watchers community. Come talk about TV with us. You can also join us on our Discord server, which is back online, and we're having a lot of fun talking about TV there as well. But feel free to subscribe to the channel, join the community. But in any case, keep binging, and I'll see you next time.